Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the deep and honestly pretty surprising common ground between Christianity and Islam. We're talking about two faiths that, together, are followed by more than half the people on Earth.
So let me ask you, when you hear Christianity and Islam in the same sentence, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's a story of difference, right? Maybe even conflict. It's a narrative we see in the headlines and read about in history books all the time.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if the most important, most powerful story isn't about the differences, but about everything they share? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore together. We're going to start by peeling back all those layers of what we think we know, to find the deep, often overlooked connections that really bind these two massive global faiths.
And to really understand these similarities, we have to go way back. We've got to start at their shared origin, with a single, foundational figure who stands right at the beginning of both their stories.
So, it all starts with Abraham. Both faiths trace their spiritual family tree right back to him as this foundational patriarch of monotheism. Now, from there, tradition tells us the timeline branches off. Judaism and Christianity trace their lineage through Abraham's son Isaac, and Islam through his son Ishmael. But the crucial part? They all grew out of the same soil, the same geographic and cultural cradle, building on that same core idea of one God.
And that shared heritage is exactly why we call them Abrahamic religions. But it's about so much more than just a common ancestor. Think of it like a shared spiritual DNA. It's built on these three huge pillars: a rock-solid belief in one God, a deep reverence for a shared line of prophets, and a fundamental respect for sacred texts that are believed to be divinely inspired.
So with a shared foundation that strong, it probably won't surprise you that both faiths offer a remarkably similar blueprint for how to live a good, moral life. Let's take a look at how that actually plays out.
For example, let's talk about charity. In both Christianity and Islam, taking care of the poor isn't just, a nice thing to do. It's a core pillar of the faith. It's a sacred duty.
In Islam, the Quran is crystal clear about this. It says true righteousness isn't about which direction you face when you pray. It's about what you do. It's about giving from what you have to those who need it. It's so important that it's actually built into the faith as zakat, which is a required charitable contribution. And then you see this incredibly powerful parallel in Christianity. Jesus taught that when you serve the most vulnerable people, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, you are, in fact, serving God directly. It's an act of seeing the divine in the least of these. Okay, another huge shared value is compassion. And in both traditions, this is way more than just a human feeling. It's seen as an essential quality of God, something that believers are actually commanded to try and reflect in their own lives. The Quran actually describes the entire mission of the Prophet Muhammad as an act of universal mercy, or rahmah, for absolutely everything in creation. There's even a famous teaching that says your faith isn't really complete until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And in the Christian New Testament, the idea is put even more bluntly. Love isn't just something God does. The text says it's what God is. It's presented as the very essence of the divine, which makes it the most important commandment for all followers.
And honestly, the ethical overlap just keeps going. Both faiths put a huge emphasis on social justice, on forgiveness, and on being responsible caretakers or stewards of the earth. They share values like modesty and have this profound belief that human life is sacred. The common ground here is just enormous.
So we've seen how the ethics line up, but the common ground actually goes even deeper than that, right to the very core of their beliefs about God and God's relationship with humanity.
The absolute bedrock, the non-negotiable foundation for both Christianity and Islam is monotheism. It's the belief in one single, all-powerful, and merciful creator. That's the central pillar that holds up everything else.
So how does this one God communicate with humanity? Well, according to both faiths, it's through a long shared line of prophets. Figures like Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, they're all revered figures in both traditions, seen as messengers who carried that same core monotheistic message.
And that brings us to Jesus, or Isa in Arabic, who is a massively important figure in both faiths. I mean, look at this. Both traditions agree on his virgin birth to Mary, they both believe he performed miracles, and they both believe he's coming back at the end of time. The fundamental split is over his status. For Christians, he is the divine Son of God, and his crucifixion is what atones for sin. For Muslims, he is one of the greatest prophets in the Messiah who was raised to heaven by God without being crucified.
So understanding both the incredible similarities and this key difference is just essential.
Okay, so seeing all these connections, from their shared ethics to their theology, brings us to the really big question. Why does any of this matter today? Well, when you look past the headlines and all the noise, a completely different story starts to emerge. It's a story that starts with a shared ancestor, Abraham, and leads to a shared blueprint for a just life, one built on charity, compassion, and mercy. The common ground is just vast.
And that leaves us with one last question to think about. If over half the people on this planet follow a faith that is rooted in mercy, in justice, and in love for your neighbor, what could we as a global community build on that shared foundation?